I never expected a simple late-night drive to turn into the most unnerving 2 hours of my life. Halfway home, I caught them in my rearview mirror. 2 steady headlights fixed dead center, holding the exact same place behind me no matter how I eased the wheel. No drift, no gain. Just there, locked on me in the dark. My name's Mike. I'm 29, and I was heading back from a friend's place across state lines. 5 hours total. Most of it on quiet 2-lane highways that turn into long stretches of interstate before breaking back into county roads. I'd done this drive enough times to know where the gas stations close early and where the shoulder crumbles to gravel. The sky had that pitch-black, moonless look that makes your high beams feel smaller than they should be, and the only other lights were a scatter of farmhouses way off the road. The inside of my car was warm, coffee sweet, and humming with low tire noise. I was deep into a podcast, one of those true crime ones with soft narration and long pauses, half listening, half letting my mind walk around the day, when I noticed the lights. At first they were nothing more than background, like a reflection in glass. But the longer I watched the rear view, the more it felt like those headlights weren't reacting to the road at all. Every minor curve I took, every grade change, they held the same distance and the same alignment. It wasn't aggressive. It was precise. I told myself it was normal highway behavior. People accidentally pace each other for miles, especially at night when no one wants to be completely alone on an empty road. Maybe they just locked onto my speed because it was comfortable. I took a sip from my travel mug and set it back in the cup holder, forcing my eyes forward. For a minute it worked. I let the podcast fill the car again, let the white lines click past. I switched lanes to pass a slow-moving truck, blinker ticking once, and the car behind me moved at the same instant. No lag, no decision time. When I settled back into the right lane, they settled too, still the exact same distance away. A few minutes later it happened again with another truck. Me out and in, them out and in, mirrored like we were on rails. I tried rolling a couple of miles an hour off my speed. Their headlights softened and then sharpened, like a camera keeping focus. I nudged the cruise back up. They matched. It was all so measured that it didn't feel like a coincidence anymore. My hands were a little damp on the wheel. I checked my side mirror for a better look, but their beams washed the features out. I could make out the basic silhouette. Mid-size sedan, low profile. Something hung from their rear view, the faint outline of a dangling shape that swung whenever they hit a seam in the pavement. I didn't want to stare long enough to make it obvious, so I looked forward again and considered my options. I could just keep driving and see if they turned off. Or I could force a change and see if they followed. At the next interchange, I took the exit ramp late. Brake lights coming on a hair faster than comfortable, and swung under the overpass onto a frontage road. Sodium streetlights appeared every few hundred feet, each one turning my windshield a warm flash before I went dark again. I checked the rear view. The headlights took the ramp behind me and slid under the bridge with the same measured spacing, reappearing when I did. It felt deliberate in a way that was hard to explain. They weren't pushing me. They were just refusing to leave. I turned onto a county road I barely remembered. The green sign went past too quickly to read, and the asphalt turned narrow, then rough. Fences lined both sides, interrupting fields that looked like water at night. Twice I pulled onto the shoulder and slowed like I was checking my phone, giving them a clean lane to go around. Twice they eased back too, hovering at a respectful distance that didn't make sense. The emptiness pressed in. No other cars, no open businesses, just the sound of my tires on a surface that switched between smooth and patched and smooth again. They finally crept close enough, on one of those slowdowns, for me to catch a detail in the side mirror, a crack in the passenger side fog light lens, and a paper temporary tag taped behind the rear glass. That, and the dangling thing on the mirror. A little pine tree air freshener. I stared forward again, suddenly aware of how long it would take anyone to get out here if I needed help. I didn't like thinking that way, so I tried to replace it with logistics instead. The main highway wasn't far if I could find the right turn, and there was a gas station a few exits south that stayed open no matter how late it got. Bright lights, people, cameras. I pulled up the map on my phone long enough to see the line redraw and then tossed it back in the passenger seat. The road bent left, then left again. I pushed the speed a little and took a tight right toward the on-ramp for the interstate. The car behind me didn't try to pass or close the gap. They fit themselves neatly into the same window of space I was giving them, like we were parts on a conveyor belt. Back on the interstate, I shared my location with a friend and typed, "Headlights been behind me forever. Might be nothing." She responded right away. "Stay on the main road. Go somewhere crowded." And the 3 dots started pulsing again, like she had more to say, and stopped herself. I thought about calling the highway patrol, but what would I report? A car is behind me? So I did the next best thing. I decided to go where there were eyes. The gas station sat just off the next major exit, the kind with an attached mini-mart and a couple of semis always idling along the side. I took the off-ramp and drifted to the far pump at the edge of the lot, nosed in but angled so I could shoot straight back to the exit if I needed to. The other car didn't pull to a pump. It rolled past the storefront windows, paused, and stopped near the air pump in the corner shadow where the lot light didn't fully reach. It turned slightly, angled toward me. I could see the outline of the driver's door. I couldn't see the driver. I kept my hands on the wheel and watched through the rear view. The door cracked open and then shut again. No one got out. The dangling pine tree in their mirror barely moved. Inside the store, 2 people were standing at the counter talking to the clerk. Relief should have come with that. Witnesses, a camera, but the arrangement of the cars made my skin crawl. If the other driver pulled forward, they could block me. If they backed up and swung around, they could pin my front bumper with theirs. All this calculation felt strange and automatic, like my brain had already decided something and was pulling me along. I didn't even reach for the gas nozzle. I put the car in drive, pulled a slow U that kept the other vehicle in my sight line, and eased back toward the exit lane. As I turned, their headlights blinked on and then off. A quick test pulse that lit the surface of my hood and was gone. Nothing else moved. I rolled out onto the street, merged back onto the interstate, and kept my speed legal. The instinct to floor it was strong, but outrunning a car on open highway is a movie idea, not a good plan. For a couple of minutes, there were no lights in my mirror. The interstate dipped and rose, the shoulder reflectors ticking by at even intervals, and the silence in the cabin felt like release. I started to think I'd misread the whole thing. Then the road ahead lifted under an overpass, the kind with a narrow emergency lane along the right-hand wall. A mid-sized sedan sat there, driver's side aimed at the lanes below, temporary tag in the back glass, and a cracked fog light lens flashing whenever an 18-wheeler thundered by. It was the same car. It had gotten in front of me somehow, and the way it was angled made it feel like an observation post. I kept my eyes on the lane lines and drove under without looking up. My chest was tight, like trying to breathe with a belt cinched around my ribs. I took the next exit for a truck stop I knew was big. Dozens of pumps, rows of semis, bright canopy lights that turned the asphalt into daylight. I pulled between 2 parked rigs and backed in until my rear bumper was a couple feet from a wall of steel. The move was deliberate. Less open space behind me, 1 fewer place for someone to stand. I sat there a moment with my hands on the wheel and felt, for the first time since the gas station, something close to safe. Engines rumbled. Air brakes hissed. People walked from lit door to lit door. I texted my friend again. At the truck stop. Think they're gone. And got back a string of messages. Stay inside near people. Don't leave right away. She was right. If someone wanted me to relax and then follow me back out, this would be the lull they'd count on. I grabbed my jacket and went into the store, took a slow lap of the aisles, and bought a coffee I didn't want. When I told the clerk I might hang out a while, he nodded like he heard that every night and didn't ask questions. When I came back out, the lot had shifted. Different trucks, a few empty spaces where there hadn't been before. The sedan was nowhere I could see. Still, I took my time before unlocking my car, scanning the lot and checking the mirrors once I got inside. The drive home from there was quiet, but I found myself watching my rear view like it was a lifeline. Every time headlights appeared behind me, I measured their movements, waiting to see if they would start matching mine. I got home later than planned, parked under the streetlight, and sat for a moment with the engine off. The street was still. The silence didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt thin, like something had been stretched too far. I went inside, locked the door, and stood at the window looking down at my car. The glass caught my reflection, faint against the pale cone of the streetlight, and for a second it felt like I was looking at someone else, someone watching me from the dark. My own eyes in the glass were fixed, unblinking, the same way I'd stared into that rear view for miles. And that's when it hit me. If they'd wanted to follow me home, I wouldn't have known until right now. I'd driven lonely highways before, but never had I felt more like prey than that night. The blacktop stretched out in front of me like an endless ribbon, my headlights punching through the dark. A pair of taillights glowed faint in the distance, the only sign I wasn't the last person alive on the road. The dash clock glared 2:11 a.m. My name's Aaron. I'd been driving since late afternoon after visiting family out of state, trying to get home in one push. Coffee had worn off hours ago. My eyes burned from staring at lane markers. The radio was down low just to keep me company. It was one of those nights where you start counting the miles by how often the GPS chirps. Mile marker 184 flicked past. The highway was almost too quiet, the kind of silence that feels heavier than it should. That's when I noticed headlights swelling in my rear view. A semi, closing fast. The thing filled my mirror in seconds, its beams flooding the cabin so bright I had to flip the mirror to night mode. But instead of passing, the truck just tucked in close behind me. I could feel its engine vibrating up through my seat, the low hum rattling my bones. I expected it to swing out left, pass me, and keep rolling. That's what rigs always do out here. But it didn't. It held. And before I could decide whether to speed up or pull over to the shoulder, another semi slid up on my left side, pacing me perfectly. Its wall of reflective tape stretched from my driver's door to the horizon line. Now I had one on my bumper, one on my side, and nowhere else to go. I told myself not to panic. Truckers convoy sometimes. Maybe it was nothing. I sat taller in my seat, gripped the wheel like a test was coming, and kept a steady 70. My pulse said otherwise. The one behind inched closer any time I slowed, bathing my backseat in light. The one on the left sped up every time I pressed the gas. I was being matched, pinned. "All right," I muttered. Message received. The left rig blared its horn, a single long note that vibrated in my chest. In that moment, its interior cab light flicked on, and I saw a passenger. He leaned forward just enough for me to see the outline of a grin, a phone raised in his hand, pointed right at me. Filming. My stomach flipped. I forced my eyes back to the road. I tried a signal, a polite blink right like I might duck off to the shoulder. The truck behind surged forward, just enough to make me snap the wheel straight again. The horn came again from my left, steady and patient, like they were calling the shots. My throat was dry when I muttered, "What the hell do you want from me?" The road unspooled forever. Then I saw it, a green exit sign ahead. Exit 237, 1 mile. No services, no gas, just a hook of pavement into the dark. I thought, off is off. Just get off this route. I tapped the cruise off and tried to plan. Maybe I could ease behind the left rig and slip out. I checked the mirror. My blood ran cold. 2 more semis in the distance, high lights swelling larger. Another convoy, or worse, the rest of this one. If I stayed boxed between the 2 on me, those others would catch up and make 4. The part of me that wanted logic said it could be coincidence. The rest of me knew better. The trucks around me moved in sync. The left one nosed ahead just enough to block. The rear one dimmed and brightened its high beams, like a coded signal. As the ramp neared, both rigs accelerated, then braked hard in unison, sliding across both lanes. The one on the right angled wide, blocking the entire exit ramp with its trailer like a gate slamming shut. Just as the ramp approached, the truck slowed and spread across both lanes, deliberately blocking the exit ramp entirely. Panic spiked. If I stayed boxed in, the others closing from behind would trap me completely. My body decided before my brain did. I yanked the wheel right, tires exploding onto the gravel shoulder. The car jolted like it had been punched. Stones hammered the undercarriage. The gap between the angled trailer and the guardrail looked impossible, just a slit of black space. I aimed for it anyway. Metal shrieked as my side mirror scraped the trailer, the sound so sharp it made my teeth ache. Branches clawed at the paint as I skimmed the guardrail. My tires fishtailed once, twice, and for a second, I thought the whole car would flip. Then the wheels bit asphalt, and I shot down the ramp, heart hammering like I'd been ripped out of a trap. Behind me, I heard shouting. Someone leaning out a cab window, voice carried but torn apart by the roar of engines. The ramp spat me onto a county road, no lights, no signs. I turned right, tires humming on faded asphalt, my eyes flicking from mirror to windshield and back. The GPS stuttered once and died, no service. Panic pressed closer than the trucks had. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't keep rolling blind. I found a pull-off where brush sagged into a ditch. I nosed the car in, branches whispering against the fenders, and killed the headlights. Darkness swallowed me whole. Out here, no streetlights, no glow, just my own pulse and the faint hiss of wind in the weeds. I sat like that for hours. Every pair of semi lights rolling by in the distance made my chest tighten. Sometimes I thought I heard engines idling closer, but it was just blood in my ears. I pulled my jacket tight and leaned the seat back, staring at the roof until gray seeped into the edges of night. By morning, the world had shifted back. I stepped out and realized I hadn't gone far at all. I could see the highway through a gap in the brush. Commuters now filled it, neat rows of cars sliding past, business as usual. I backtracked, found a ramp, and merged again, ordinary traffic surrounding me like nothing had ever happened, but I couldn't shake it. Every time a semi passed, I checked the passenger window. Most were empty. A few had lunchboxes or dogs, but one, white tractor, polished bumper, slid past with a man in the passenger seat holding up a phone, pointed out the glass like he'd been filming for miles. He didn't look at me. He didn't have to. My skin crawled like I'd already seen that face. The rig drifted ahead, swallowed by traffic. Just another rectangle on the road. I let 3 cars fill the space between us, my fingers still tight on the wheel. I never got a plate, never filed a report. I just drove home. But I can still feel it. That quiet grin in the glow of a cab light, the deliberate way they boxed me, and the camera aimed steady, like I was prey caught in a game. And even now, when a semi fills my mirror at night, I don't see traffic. I see predators circling. Past midnight on a dead-stretch highway, the only thing in my mirror was a pair of square headlights, and they weren't letting go. I've driven plenty of lonely miles before, but never had I felt more watched than I did that night. My name's Evan. I was heading home after a long weekend with family, trying to make it in one push. Coffee had stopped helping an hour back. I was just managing my blinks and counting the green signs to keep my head straight. The highway felt bigger at that hour. No chatter on the radio, no cluster of cars to tuck into, just the hush of tires and the steady tick of lane reflectors skating by. A stray semi would thunder past now and then, but mostly it was me, the blacktop, and the low hum of my engine filling the cabin like white noise. Headlights rose in my rear view. Square, a little too far apart, the kind you see on older trucks. I expected them to swing left and go by. Instead, they settled in behind me at a rude distance, close enough that the glare fogged the mirror and lit the headliner. I tapped my brakes just enough to flash the lights. The truck didn't back off. It floated there like a shadow glued to my bumper, the engine note lost under mine, but present in the way the cabin vibrated in short, uneven pulses. When it crept tighter, I got a clean look at the front grille. No plate. Just a square maw of metal and plastic where the numbers should have been. I switched lanes to give it room, and finally, it eased forward and slipped ahead of me for the first time. Relief kicked, maybe too fast. My headlights painted its tailgate, and I saw the same thing on the back. Bare bumper, no tag, just bolt holes. Before I could clock a make or model, the pickup rolled off the gas and drifted back into my mirror, as if the driver had only pulled ahead to make sure I saw what I was supposed to see. I tried to be rational. Plenty of people drove half-legal farm trucks around here. Maybe he'd pulled the plates to paint them. Maybe it wasn't even malicious, just lazy. I told myself to stop narrating worst-case scenarios in my head and keep a normal speed. Even so, I couldn't stop checking the mirror. It wasn't the closeness so much as the precision. Every time I nudged 5 miles an hour up or down, that truck matched. If I signaled, it signaled. He was either bored or bored and mean, and either way it put a film over everything, the radio, the road, the thought of another 100 miles before home. 15 minutes bled into 20, and the pickup never committed to passing or dropping back. When I moved left to overtake a slow car, it moved left with me and settled the same distance behind. When I tucked right again, it tucked right too, the square lights painting my rear glass. The isolation made it worse. No other cars to force a choice. No patrol lights on the horizon. Just empty lanes threaded between black fields. It started feeling less like traffic and more like a private arena where I was the only player who didn't know the rules. I took an exit that fed down to a frontage road with a light. I told myself I needed a break from the glare, but really I wanted to see what he'd do off the main lanes. We rolled up to red. The pickup idled just behind my door line, where I couldn't see the driver unless I turned. The cab light flickered once, maybe a door ajar alert, maybe a bump in the road. And in that moment, I caught something I didn't expect. On the passenger seat, upright and tidy as a second rider, a shotgun. The barrel pointed at the headliner. The stock sat flat on the cushion. A seatbelt ran across the receiver like it had been buckled in on purpose. My hands tightened on the wheel so hard my fingers went warm, and then numb. Green. I rolled through and the pickup rolled with me. It didn't pull even, didn't pass. It just slid in until it could breathe on my bumper, then let out, then slid back in. Once it came in too hot, and I heard its tires bark. There was no mistake about it anymore. We were playing a game where only one of us had set the rules. "What do you want?" I said out loud to nobody. It sounded small in the cabin. My mouth had the taste of pennies. When I glanced in the mirror, those square lights were the only thing that existed behind me, like the rest of the road had been erased. Back on the highway, I tried to shake him at the next exit, hit my blinker early, dropped 10 miles an hour, and drifted toward the ramp like a normal driver changing plans. If he was just a tailgater with a temper, he'd keep straight. He didn't. The pickup snapped over the solid line and followed, the nose dipping as the driver punched the brake to make the curve. Whatever this was, it was attached to me. My heart kicked up high under my ribs. Instinct said, keep moving and don't stop where someone could pin you in. We caught the next red. I kept my face forward and used the mirror sliver like a periscope. The cab light blipped again, just a pulse, and the shotgun glinted. The driver sat still, brim low. No phone in hand, no attempt to hide the weapon. I was meant to see it and wonder why it was there. There wasn't a bag, no mask, no theatrics. Somehow that made it worse. A gun buckled in like a passenger said, I came prepared for this. It also said, I don't have to get out of the truck for you to do what I want. The light went green, and the road ahead split. Left would thread through a strip of after-hours warehouses and auto lots that would be blacked out at this hour. Right curled back onto the highway in a wide loop. Town might have people, but not now. Highway meant speed and other drivers eventually, if I could get to them. I blinked away the tunnel feeling and put my signal on for the ramp back to the main lanes. If I could get up to speed and find a semi to run with for a mile, maybe I could make this guy choose something else. Or maybe I'd just hand him a bigger stage. I took the on-ramp hot and kept my foot in it. 80. 85. The pickup merged 2 car lengths back and glued itself there, the high beams washing my rear glass like a pressure hose. A long curve came up with concrete barrier on the right and open lane to the left. He nudged me gently toward the barrier without touching me, not enough to claim anything if anyone asked, just enough to make my arms burn with the work of holding the wheel steady. I signaled left and found empty asphalt. The truck shot left too. I signaled right. He mirrored. I wasn't being followed. I was being herded. Up ahead, the reflective arrows of an overpass bend started to fan into view, each one flashing back the same urgent instruction. Hold your line. Halfway through the bend, the pickup took the inside like a stock car and drifted over until I felt the slightest kiss at my rear quarter. It wasn't a slam. It was a nudge. The kind you give a table to make a glass walk. My car stepped out hard. Every instinct screamed to lift off the gas, but muscle memory kept my foot steady while I counter-steered and waited for the tires to bite back. A semi barked its horn somewhere ahead, a deep, furious blast that vibrated through the bridge. My car snapped straight. In the mirror, I caught a smear of taillights as the pickup braked and darted down a narrow service cut that paralleled the overpass. It didn't run. It simply peeled away, like the move had been the whole point, and we'd reached the end of it. My legs felt made of water. I took the very next exit, rolled into a 24-hour gas station, and pulled up under lights that made the bugs look like falling ash. I left the engine running out of superstition and called 911 with both hands on the wheel so I didn't have to see how bad they were shaking. The dispatcher was patient. She asked if I could read a plate, and I told her there weren't any. She asked for a make, and I said, older pickup, square headlights, dent in the left rear quarter, and realized I'd watched him more than I thought. A cruiser arrived 12 minutes later. The officer listened, took the report, and looked down the empty road like he might see it materialize out of the dark. Without tags, there's not much to track, he said, not unkindly. We'll put out a bolo. You're lucky you kept it straight. When the paperwork was done, he added, almost as an afterthought, you're not the only one tonight. We've had a couple calls about a plateless pickup crowding people off the highway out here. No one's gotten a clean ID. Might be the same guy, might be copycats. Just keep your distance if you can. He didn't have to say from what. I merged back onto the highway once the sun was up, traffic thick with commuters. For a while, I convinced myself it was over. Just a bad night, a bad stretch of road. Then, 3 cars up in the middle lane, I spotted them. The square glow of old headlights on a boxy pickup. Normal speed, nothing out of place. But the sight hollowed me out. No plates on the bumper. I couldn't tell if it was the same truck or another just like it. And that was worse, realizing there might be more than one out here, waiting for the next driver alone in the dark.